All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first screencast of the year. So like I told you guys in class, this is something that we're going to do throughout the year. So it may feel a little bit uh, strange at first to be watching, you know, a lesson at home, but it's something that we're going to get used to. We'll do it, pretty much on a weekly basis. And so for our first topic today, we're actually not going to be doing a historical topic. We're going to be focusing on writing. So specifically, we're going to be looking at writing introduction paragraphs. And so I want you guys to take some careful notes on this, because there may be certain things that I would like you guys to do that teachers in the past have not asked you uh, to work on. So we're going to start with, the very first part of writing in general for our class, and that is not actually writing. The first important thing is to understand what the question is asking you. So we're going to call the question from here on out the prompt. So let's take a look at a sample prompt. This one, uh, you could pause the video for a second and read through the prompt. This one is not something that we really dive too much into yet. So you really wouldn't be able to answer this question, but you have a little bit of an idea. So if you look at the question, the first thing you have to do is to understand what they're asking. Now, for this course, this is going to be more challenging than it would be in even your past AP Global course. Definitely more challenging than your Regents course. And for this year, it's harder than it's been in the past for previous AP US history students. So what you have to say to yourself is, what is this question exactly asking me? And really, there's kind of two components here. So it says, evaluate the extent to which transatlantic interactions from 1600 to 1763 contributed to maintaining continuity as well as change in labor systems in British North American colonies. The first thing you have to understand is really this first component here, the transatlantic interactions. So what exactly do they mean there? So if you break that down, how I interpret it is the interaction between uh, the British and the European world, and the British colonies in North America. Meaning, what's going back and forth. So in my head, a couple of things are coming to mind. First thing that's coming to mind is there's people going back and forth. You have immigration, you have forced migrations, you have slavery that's occurring going across the transatlantic avenue. You also have, um, beyond people, you have goods going back and forth. So you have trading, the Columbian Exchange that we talked about. You have mercantilism that's taking place in economic policy that the British are putting in place on the British North American colonies. So you have to kind of break the question down. So that first part, understand the first component. The second, this is a little bit difficult language, right? They're saying contributed to maintaining continuity as well as change in the labor systems. So what do they mean? Well, they're asking you, and this is the phrasing that I want you guys to get used to, because they're going to use this phrasing in essay questions often. So this is the first type of phrasing that you might come across. So maintaining continuity as well as change. What that means is they're asking you what is staying the same and what is changing. So is something causing labor systems to change in the Americas that's happening across the Atlantic, or is something facilitating it staying the same across the Atlantic? So you want to just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so when we write our introductions, there's really three major things that you want to kind of keep in mind and remember as you're writing your introductions. So the first one is painting a solid historical background. So I can't emphasize this enough. When you write your introduction, you really want to provide sound historical background. The tendency for students is to remain very vague in your introduction paragraphs. I don't want you guys to do that. So I'm going to give you guys samples. I want to give you a sample of the prompt, an answer to the prompt, an introduction to the prompt. So throughout this, you're going to be providing the time and the place, and you're also going to be providing historical events, like I said, that lead up to the question. And that's important. So they'll always give you a time frame. So this one gave you 1600 to 1763. it's okay to go a little bit before that time frame to provide some context for answering the question. So here I definitely want you to pause the video and to kind of read through the introduction. Um, and when you do that, what you should notice is that every sentence has some strong facts to it. It's not a vague introduction. It's not just starting with the question and then leaving, nowhere to go. It kind of sets the background. It provides concrete facts. We're going to talk about that often. Even from the introduction, you have to provide concrete facts that set up the rest of your essay, and to improve and to show that you have a really sound understanding of history. That's key. So pause the video, take a look at it, and kind of see. And when you write your introduction to your prompt, you want to kind of use this one as a model for yourself. Okay, so this I know you've talked about before in other classes. So the major and probably then the most important part of your introduction is establishing your thesis statement. So first, your location of your thesis statement. Hopefully when you pause that previous slide, you noticed the part that was the thesis statement. So the thesis statement was the last sentence in that introduction paragraph, and it should always be your last sentence in the introduction paragraph. Now your thesis should have two major components to it. It should have answer the question of what, and it's also answer the question of why. So that second part is key. Most students forget to answer the why component. They tell you what in their thesis statement in addressing the prompt, but they don't explain the why. So don't fall into that trap. And if you look back at the thesis statement provided, it does both. It tells you that things are changing throughout that time period in the labor systems because of the shift and the shortage of indentured servants. It gives as the example. So you want to make sure that you do that when you write your thesis statement. Okay? And that's a key thing to remember. All right, so just to kind of reiterate the thesis statement here, pause it again, take a look at it. Look at how it provides the what and the why, how it has factual things in there, something concrete to kind of hang on to. It's not vague, it's not general, it addresses the prompt very directly and strongly. Remember, your thesis statement is what you try to prove throughout the entire essay. It is not just a sentence that you throw on at the end of your introduction paragraph. It is the key to your essay. You are writing persuasive writing. You're writing argumentative pieces here. So if you don't have a thesis statement, or it's too general, it's too vague, there's nothing to prove. So you should always kind of go back to the thesis statement and make sure you are proving that thesis throughout your essay, and that's key. To make sure you have a good, solid thesis. All right, the last one. We're going to say this throughout the entire essay, but I always feel that students are afraid to write any details in their introduction paragraph. If you look back at the intro, there's tons of, real facts in there. And students always say, well, I'm going to save my facts for the body paragraph. I don't want to waste them in the introduction paragraph. And that's really a misunderstanding of how to write a good historical essay. That intro sets the background. So there's things that happen before what the question is asking you about that have tons of detail, that provide why the question is even relevant. And so you need to set up that time period. You need to set up historically what's going on previously. And if you fail to do that, or you do that in just a very general way, where you just kind of start with the question and you don't address the real background of it in any depth, you're not off to a good start. So don't be afraid. It's okay to put details. It's okay to put things in that introduction paragraph. It makes it much more solid. Okay? Where you really dive into your analysis that's the body paragraphs, the proof, the analysis that backs up your thesis statement. All right, so now that you have a good idea of how to write an introduction, take a look at the prompt that I provided on Edmodo for you guys, and try and work on a solid introduction. And make sure you bring that in to class on Monday.